Hello, folks. You are listening or viewing the Deal by Me podcast. This is where we ask guests to tell us your story. Your story can encourage, inspire, and transform a life. Today, we have with us Rick Ornelas, a very interesting gentleman who went from isolation and hopelessness to writing a best-selling book, 12 Hours of Heaven. I'm excited and so very thrilled to have him with me today. And so, Rick, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about your background, where you're being interviewed from, and whatever else you want to share. And I have a couple of questions, and we'll get into a nice little dialogue here.
Well, fantastic. Well, first off, James, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I appreciate just the opportunity to share a little bit more about me, and hopefully, like you said, it inspires and helps others. So I'm a regular guy, just like the rest of us. But the biggest things for me are my family and my faith and serving others. And I've been married to my wife for 26 and a half years. We have three wonderful daughters who are all now fully grown, and our last one just left the house a few months back. So now we're empty nesters. So we're navigating that journey, which is interesting and fun. But I currently reside near Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Southern California. I grew up there, the youngest of five, had four older sisters, in a family with a disciplinarian father and a lot of faith and a lot of love. And I've, for years, I kind of toiled in not really knowing what my purpose was. And, I had a family and had a life and was successful in business and was kind of, living the American dream, quote unquote. But I always felt that I was supposed to do more and that there was more to it. And, I worked in the corporate world for 20 years, and then I went off on my own and helped build a couple startups and helped, and started coaching others and had all that success. But it wasn't until the pandemic in 2020, when all of that was pretty much taken away, that I really solidified my purpose, to love and give and serve others. And that's what I'm all about now. And that's what I try to embody every day in the work that I do and just how I show up every day.
Okay, what type of businesses and what type of work did you do in those corporate fields that you just mentioned?
So I started out I worked in healthcare. I worked in medical sales and pharmaceuticals, and I was in sales, and then I was in training, and I was in management, and I held roles, everywhere from a sales rep to a manager to a executive VP of sales, and even CEO of one company, one startup, and so I wore a lot of hats. I wore a lot of hats through my career, and like I said, had success in different things, and learned a lot along the way. I mean, I take, I have a lot of gratitude for everything that I learned, because I took so much away from all of those years that I spent.
I noticed that you are a best-selling author and you're a professional coach and founder of One Spark Change. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Listeners
absolutely.
would be interested in knowing a little bit about that.
Sure. So the story of how my book came to be is pretty interesting, James, because the story itself had been in my head for over 20 years, since over 20 years ago, when my wife and I were in this major car accident with our kids on board, and we should have been killed, but we weren't. And that what inspired the story that would become 12 Hours of Heaven. But it sat in my head for those 20 years because I wasn't ready. God wasn't ready for me. I wasn't ready to write it. I wasn't in the place that I needed to be until the pandemic. As I said, a couple minutes ago, when we went into quarantine and the world shut down, and that's first when I got really anxious and afraid of what was going to happen, because my business slowed down. I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills, my mortgage, take care of my family. And then I realized that I was far better off than a lot of others, that people were dying, people were losing their homes, and that I needed to be better. So I started focusing on helping others, and did some charitable work and did some outreach to others. And that's when I started writing about using the time to help others. And that's when I started writing my book in April of 2020. And it, as I said, the story had been sitting there, but it was a slow process at first, writing about 500 words a day. But once I think God kind of took over the reins and just started downloading the story, it just flowed. And I finished the book in under 3 months. And it went through an incredible period of, spiritual transformation and connectedness with God. And in that, it was, I give him all the glory for the story, because the story came out. I was able to publish it by that October, and it started inspiring people and creating hope for others, which is what I wanted to accomplish. And I think, selfishly, I'm the one that probably got the most benefit out of writing the story, even though, I wanted to write it for others, that, I benefited the most, and it totally changed me.
Do you think that writing the book had a lot to do with the accident that you were in? And I note that you thought that you'd almost kill your family. How did the accident occur? And just tell us a little bit about the accident, because obviously the accident is what kind of got you on your track, your spiritual journey. The book sat there in your head for these 20 years since that. So what was happening before that time that caused the accident?
So back then, I was a young man. My wife and I had been married for a few years. We had 2 young daughters who were 1 and 4 at the time. We were just trying to figure it out, starting a family, having a young family, being young in our relationship. And I was still selfish. I was arrogant. I was one of those young guys that thought that, he couldn't show his emotions and had to be tough all the time. And then, people say, and you being a pastor, you might have said this, I don't know, but that if you're not listening, God's going to turn the volume up, right? Or slap you upside the head. And so one day we had gone down to a children's birthday party that was a couple hours south of where we lived, and we were driving back home on a Sunday afternoon, late on a Sunday afternoon, and it started to rain really hard, and so hard that the water couldn't really clear the windshield wipers couldn't really clear the water. And we see people pulling over because they stop, they don't want to drive, and it's because it's kind of bad. And we think about doing that, but it's late and it's starting to get dark, and we're worried that it's just going to be worse because we're still a couple hours from home. So we decide to continue on, and probably in my arrogance, in my, youthful arrogance, I say, oh yeah, I'm fine, we can continue on, and probably driving faster than I should. And we were driving in the slow lane, in the first lane, and I hit a large puddle, and we start spinning out of control. And we spin to the left across 4 lanes to the left, and we're about to hit the center divider, and I'm screaming, my wife's screaming, and for some reason, just inches before we're about to hit the center divider, we don't, and we start spinning the other direction, and we spin across the freeway, all 4 lanes the other way, and we go off the shoulder, we go up a dirt embankment, and we hit a brick wall, and we flip over, and we land back on the wheels completely. And the roof is smushed down to about eye level, and the windshield is all shattered, and the right side is all smashed in, and it's all, the glass is all broken, and the car is filled with glass and dirt, and our things are everywhere. And my kids are crying. They had been asleep, but they're crying. And so, my wife says she's fine. Her shoulder's a little sore from banging into the wall, but we managed to crawl out of the car on my side and get our kids out, and they're fine, not a scratch. And we make our way to the side of the road, and this elderly couple had pulled over, and the lady grabs a blanket and wraps it around my wife because it's pouring rain. And my wife is holding my daughters and thanking God and just crying, that they're okay. And the gentleman tells me that it's the most incredible thing he had ever seen in his life, and that they thought we were killed for sure. And even the accident, the highway patrol and the accident report, and even the tow truck driver, that they all thought that by the look of the car that, we had been killed. And we weren't. We were completely unharmed. And it was, James, that totally changed my life, because I went through a period of reflection and for months where I would just think about, what would have happened if it didn't go that way, right? If I had harmed my family or worse. And it totally changed me, because one day I was sitting in my car staring up at this little guardian angel pin that my mother had given me to put in my new car to protect us. And she had swore to me that our guardian angel had protected us. And so I'm sitting there looking at the little pin, and that's where the idea for my book hit me like a movie. Like I had seen it, I just watched the whole movie. And so I had the whole thing clear in my head. And I thought, wow, I really need to write this. This is very special. But I went back to life. I wrote a page and went back to life, and wasn't ready, right? Wasn't ready to write it, and wasn't ready to be the person that I needed to be. And it took me 20 years of growing and developing. And I wrote different things. I wrote a to-do list of ways that I wanted to live my life, like being grateful and being present with my family and treating others the way I wanted them to be, that they wanted to be treated. And those gave me guidance over the next 20 years. But it took, I was stubborn. It took a lot of work, a lot of God's work to get me ready 20 years later.
I can definitely understand that. And I understand now why you say you almost kill your family. It's a really powerful story, but to just have to go through that is very, very interesting. And I'm sitting here almost in amaze how you did survive it, how your wife and family survived it. And I can certainly understand how you were inspired to write this book, 12 hours of heaven. It's really amazing. Uh, I also note that you're the founder of One Spark Change. Would you tell us a little bit about that? What is that, and what do you do with One Spark Change, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's actually I Spark Change, the letter I Spark Change.
Okay.
I could see I'd be confused for a one for sure. And I Spark Change was born out of the writing of my book. So when I had said that God kind of took the reins and helped me with the writing of the book, I had been going about just writing a little bit every day and kind of struggling along. And as I was writing, I started to get so super spiritually connected with God. And I felt that he was just right there with me the whole way. And that didn't come until I started writing in April. That came up about June, early June or mid-June. And my writing went from 500 words a day to over 2,000 in a couple hours. I would, write a whole chapter in just one day, and it flourished. And that's where, the book was finished so quickly. But in that time period where I was so spiritually connected, James, I not only did the writing improve, but I think I was being transformed, because I would wake up in the middle of the night with dreams and visions and all sorts of ideas of more work that I was supposed to do and things that I was supposed to create. And that's where the idea for I Spark Change was born. It was in one of those dreams or visions, or I don't even remember exactly, daydreams. It was in one of those periods where I felt that I needed to do more than just write a book, that I had to help others in a bigger way. And
So
And that's where it came from.
So how do you, what are you doing to help others in this bigger way? You're doing like coaching and public speaking, sharing with individuals. Share a little bit about what you are doing when you talk about helping others. And I understand the I spark change. Something happened within you to make you want to do something. That's the that I spark change really kind of says that. So
Yes.
what is it that you began doing? Could you? I know you wrote the book. Tell us a little bit more about what it was that you were start doing.
Yeah. So what I did is after the book was published and it came out and launched, I went to work on building iSpark Change. So we created an organization called iSpark Change. Originally, I was going to make it a nonprofit, but I spoke to some friends that run nonprofits, and they said, "Don't make it a nonprofit because you'll be limited." So I made it, an organization, and what we do is we empower others to elevate their social impact and spread positive change. So it really has a couple, actually three components now. One is we have a community, an online community. So through social media, through our website, we have an online community where we have daily inspiration, daily motivation. We share things online. We share examples of others that are sparking change, ones that we call social impact hero. So people, organizations, nonprofits, groups that are sparking change, that are making the world a better place. So we amplify their message. We share what they're all about on our social media. We share what they're about on our website, our YouTube channel, so all over the place. And we highlight them as well as the inspirational, motivational stuff. That's one component. The second component is the social impact component, where that would be what you alluded to, my coaching of businesses on how to be impactful through your work. So how to not only make your business better, which is what I had experience in building businesses, but also how you can make your business be impactful. So to make the world a better place at the same time, because you can really do one and the same. It's not exclusive. And so there's that work. And then also the speaking and the writing and the different ways that I spread impact, doing interviews like this to try to share about iSpark Change. And the last component, James, real briefly, is that beginning in January, so just in a few weeks, we are going to start building the world's first social impact social media platform. So it will be a social media platform that is 100% geared towards connecting and empowering all these people that are doing good in the world. So your podcast, because it inspires people, or a nonprofit, or an individual that does missionary work, or a business that is giving back to to society, it will be a one central hub, one place where all of those people can connect, can support one another, can learn about others, can have profiles and share the work that they're about. And that doesn't exist. I mean, there's lots of groups and things, but one central place doesn't exist. And so that's what we're going to start building for iSpark Change.
Very, very interesting. Let me ask you this. My podcast is obviously about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. And obviously, you're sharing today has met all of those criteria. And so I'm very excited, very thrilled to have you. And what I always ask, and this as a result of my ministry, and I'm retiring at the end of this month, and that's one reason I started my podcast. I want to continue to do something that I thought would encourage and inspire and hopefully transform lives. And I thought that would really coincide with my continuous ministry. So what I asked folk to do is to kind of tell us how their experiences and the events in their lives can also help others, and also how these same experiences and events in their life has helped them or have helped them in their daily struggles. And you seem to have basically already answered some of those questions. And so I, I, I'm excited and thrilled to have already heard it. So let me just kind of ask you this: how can others spread positive change, and how can people be more positive? These are some things that looks like you can really expound on some more for us.
Yeah, thank you, James. And I'm glad that, what I've shared will hopefully, encourage, inspire, and transform lives, because that's what I seek to do every day. So you and I are on the same journey, which is great. As far as, spread positive change and be more positive, what I found, in myself is that the first thing that I had to realize was that I make a difference, that even though I'm only one person, that I make a difference in making the world a better place. Because for many years, I just felt, oh, I'm just one person. I'm too small. What impact is me doing this? Oh, hey, I pick up a piece of trash. What impact does that make on, making the world a better place? But that's thinking too small. That's just thinking, of that one incident in itself, and not thinking of the ripple effect and the bigger impact. So the first thing I would say is to realize that every single person has an impact on everyone else and the world. And so to realize that everyone has the power to change the world. Everyone. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live, what you do, how old you are. Every single person has an impact to make the world a better place. So that's number one. Number two would be to realize that every day, all of your actions have that potential as well. So each day, everything you do can either positively impact or negatively impact others. So you go out in your car and you're driving to the grocery store, and someone wants to merge into traffic, and you either wave them in and smile and wave them in, or you pull up and they can't get in and they have to, go around the block or whatever. That's a positive impact or a negative impact. You might make them late by not letting them in. I mean, you can think about how far that ripple goes, right? And so when you think about it that way, that every interaction you have with others, if you're conscious about it, then you realize, wow, I can really impact someone every day. So even if it's smiling at someone that you see in the grocery store, or saying hello to a stranger. I mean, I always use simple examples: putting someone's grocery cart back at the supermarket, or waving them in traffic. I mean, these are little things that happen every day that you have the potential to do, and you never know what impact, what spark that's going to be for someone else. That smile that you give them could be the only smile they see all day. That word of encouragement or thank you could be the only word they heard from another person all day, especially post-pandemic, that people are so isolated still. So and I've heard story after story after story that we actually gave it a term, a spark moment, where you spark that one little action that causes a ripple effect for someone that goes throughout their life, even not just throughout their day, but throughout their life. And so when you think of it that way, then you realize that you have the power to spread positive change, that you can be positive in every little action that you do, and you can literally change the world.
Wow, what a fantastic story! Let me, what habits help you to live this amazing, life? Something you got to be doing something that's keeping you going and keeping this spark going. Talk about that a little bit with listeners of this podcast.
Well, that's the easiest question you've asked, James, because I don't take any credit for that. I give all credit to God for that, because I feel that He put me on this path, that He's the one that gave me the story for my book, that He's the one that gave me the idea for iSpark Change, that He's the one that set me on this path. And when I started going down this path, I prayed and I said, okay, God, I feel that this is what you want me to do. So I'm going to do it. I feel I'm just going to go on faith that this is what you want me to do. And I'm going to do it till the day I die. I'm going to keep working on this, keep building iSpark Change, keep growing, our goal at iSpark Change is by 2026 to have 1 billion people on that platform. 1 billion. And that doesn't happen with me, with just me. That needs to happen with, with God and many others helping.
Mhm.
And so I give him all the glory. Some of the things I do on a daily basis to really help me feel that is, I pray, I read scripture every morning and night. I journal gratitude every morning and night. And be grateful about every experience, good or quote unquote bad. That I'm grateful for all those, because they're part of the journey. They're part of me going down the path that I'm on. And so that's just what I focus on. And then the last thing I'll say real quick is that I just focus on each little step at a time. That I'm just working on one thing now today, one thing tomorrow, the next thing. That I'm not, billion, that can be huge, right? Oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there. But I'm just going to keep going that one little step, that one next thing.
This is interesting and very exciting to hear. I take it when we first started talking, you talked about your spiritual background. So did you grow up? And I'm not sure if you said it or not. Did you grow up in a faith family, and but you just kind of went your own way at some point, like kind of like all of us do at some point. Uh, am I correct in making that assessment?
Yeah, you're spot on. You're spot
Okay.
on, James. So I grew up in a very faith-filled family, very strong. It was a big part of our life. It was a big part of what my father especially wanted to instill in us from a young age. But as you start venturing off on your own, and probably in my later teenage years, and you get a girlfriend, and then you start having other interests in sports and this and that, and then even when I had said, back in the accident times, my wife and I, we had a young family, but we weren't, I don't think at that time, we were really going to church much. It wasn't really a big part of our lives. And it was after that we started going back to church on Sundays, and faith became a stronger part. And over the years, it has grown more and more and more and more. And, and I feel my faith is stronger now than it has ever been. And even as a result of, just a couple of years ago, where it became even elevated, even stronger. And then the studying scripture and all that stuff helps, because, we're all work at different speeds. And I was just a slow learner in that regard. I just took more time to get there. But yeah, that's been a constant in most of my life, right? It's been a constant. God's been
Okay.
there all of my life. As I look back, I see he's always been there.
Okay. Okay. Um, Tell us, as we bring this to a close, tell us where we can uh, get your book, where listeners can get your book, this 12 Hours of Heaven. It sounds very interesting. I have to admit that I have not pulled it up yet, but listening to you today makes me want to read this book. Uh, so tell us where we can get that, and also where we can learn a little bit more about I Spark Change. Could you just tell us that, uh, if you will?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking, because those are very important to me. And my book, 12 Hours of Heaven, Lessons for a Better World, which is a subtitle, it's on Amazon. There's a Kindle, an ebook, and a paperback version. It's, if you search it online, there's also on Google Play, there's an audiobook now. We released that earlier this year, an audiobook. So you can go on Google Play and get an audiobook. And yeah, anyone that is interested in 12 Hours of Heaven, I mean, they can go to 12hoursofheaven.com, and it will just redirect to Amazon. But as far as iSpark Change, if you go to the letter I, sparkchange.com, you learn more about our community, sign up for our monthly newsletter where we spotlight others and share more about what we're doing. And then we're very active on different social media. So on Instagram, on YouTube, we have, iSpark Change. We're iSpark Change anywhere, Twitter, There's even a LinkedIn group. I mean, you can find us on Facebook, and that's where you'll see daily inspiration and motivation. And people can join iSpark Change on the website, and then they'll find out about that future social media community. So they'll be the first to learn about that. But anywhere you do iSpark Change, I mean, you'll find us. You should find us there, and same with the book. But hopefully, there'll be some that want to check out more.
Okay, and there you have it. Rick Ornelas, best-selling author of 12 Hours of Heaven, a professional coach, and founder of iSpark Change. I tell you, this has been a real blessing today. And again, Rick, thank you so very much for coming and sharing with us today. We are so grateful to you.